Hello, c'est moi, Mystical McKay. I just went live like 10 times. Fucking shit up. Trying to get the audio and video ideal in order for me to do shit that I want to do on here because I'm so confused. And I'm just doing my best and it's a lot. And I'm trying, but I just thought to kind of have something up on my page, just a little bit of something. I just thought that I'd read a little bit. My wonderful friend suggested that I do it. So, what I'll be reading for just a chapter is The Completion Process by Teal Swan. This is probably one of my favorite books that I've ever read or listened to in my entire life. It has changed my life. It has impacted me in a very positive way. And eventually I just want to share and start reading books, some of my favorite books to you guys. So this is the beginning of that. It's very ghetto. I look like crap. It doesn't matter because it's just the beginning and things are just going to get better from here. Oh my God. Let's just get started, okay? The Completion Process by Miss Teal Swan. Just the first chapter. Actually, let's just do the introduction because the introduction is actually pretty lengthy in itself and it'll do as well. Introduction. It was the year 2001. I was sitting in a hole, my wrists and ankles tied together. I can't say that I was afraid, because the years of abuse leading up to that point had desensitized me to danger. It was more that I had given up on life. I did not see the point. I had conceded to the reality that my life was a torture chamber made for one, and I was never going to get out alive. When I was in grade school, I had been targeted by a family acquaintance whom, unbeknownst to my parents, was a psychopath. Outwardly, he presented himself as a respected community leader and a health professional, but he had a much darker side. Only a few people knew that he participated in cult rituals. He became my childhood mentor and gained my unfettered access to me. My parents trusted him and were very unaware that my relationship with him was built on torture. They saw most of the red flags but misinterpreted them. My abuser threatened to kill my family if I ever tried to tell anyone what he did. And I knew he was fully capable of murder. The ritual abuse lasted for 13 years. I spent a lot of time sitting in that hole in the ground, nicknamed the mind space. It was just large enough for a person to sit in. Covering the hole was nailed together of weathered wood. In the summer, the bottom of the hole was lined with stinging nettle. This was his idea and way of training my mind. Before I was put into that space, I was usually stripped naked and my wrists and ankles were tied together. I had no idea how long that he was going to leave me there. I had no idea whether he was decide to keep me there indefinitely, kill me, or return me to my parents later that night. Despite the pain and uncertainty, I had been confined to this hellhole so many times it felt like routine. I was acclimated to suffering, except for one thing. Going into the mind space meant that I had to be alone with myself, and I could not bear it. I felt only the emptiness within me. Even worse than emptiness, it was a complete void, its edges colored by grief. For years, I did everything that I could to avoid that grief and to distance myself from that void. And then something happened. Sitting in the mind space one day, I felt that then familiar desperation. But this time, it was different. I realized that if there was movement in my feeling of desperation, that movement meant that I was traveling towards a newer emotion. The more I thought about desperation, the clearer it became that movement towards something had to be towards something wanted and away from something unwanted. So I began to ask myself the question, what is it internally that I don't want? More than that, what is it that I am internally trying to move away from? Lo and behold, I discovered my sense of desperation was actually keeping me from feeling despair, from a complete absence of hope. Losing hope is the most intense feeling of powerlessness in the range of human emotion. Some part of me was convinced that by slipping into despair would mean an actual death. So that part of me had been resisting despair in order to survive. I could say that I decided to be brave this day, but I really had just chosen to give up hope. I was standing on the edge of the precipice. I was emotionally exhausted from almost 13 years of complete torture. Despair was like a tornado that chased me no matter where I ran, and I was tired of running. I wanted death, so I did the opposite of what I had always done. I turned around and ran straight into the tornado. I committed emotional suicide. I didn't know what would happen, but I did it anyway. I was in for a surprise. For a moment, I drowned in misery, of heavy anguish. I felt like I was being crushed, bruised, and broken. I took a breath. Instead of pulling away from it, I just went deeper. I gave the feeling permission to consume me. I allowed it as if it had a valid reason to be there. And soon, like sun rays penetrating the depths of the ocean, I experienced a lightness of being. I felt relief. The fear of this feeling itself was evaporated by my choice to dive into the feeling instead. I spent some time basking in that relief. It was the first time in my life that I had not abandoned myself. At that point, I had no idea why what I had done even worked. I just knew that it did. So I tried it again and again. I tried it almost every time when I was confronted with an uncomfortable feeling that I was tempted to run away from. Eventually, I managed to escape from the man who had stolen my childhood, and for years after that, I tried to heal. In the years that followed, I tried to understand exactly why the technique that I stumbled upon had worked. Once I understood how I actually healed myself, I realized that this was a breakthrough that could really change the world. The timing could not have been better. So many souls in this world need healing, and I have discovered that it all starts with really allowing ourselves to feel our emotions. In the womb, we humans felt sensations from the world before we even saw it. When we first came into this life as tiny babies, we experienced the world entirely through our sense perceptions. As we proceed through life, we carry the emotional tone of our childhood into our adulthood. It is a learned vibrational state that we build upon and add on to. In essence, we learn to relate to people through this emotional tone. This is positive if the emotional tone of our childhood is positive. But if the emotional tone of our childhood is negative and painful, this negative and painful emotional state will be the filter through which we perceive the entire world as adults. It will be the emotional baseline trauma that we never seem to get over. We will spend our entire lives trying to, quote-unquote, fix ourselves with little to no success. In my case, I attended trauma theory for 5 years with a few therapists who specialized in ritual trauma. I was exposed to the typical modalities and the most up-to-date therapies within that field, and I figured out what worked and what did not work. While working with a traditional trauma therapy, I was introduced to the concept of inner child work, and it was a revelation for me. The theory behind... I just got chills, and I don't know why. Straight up my back. The theory behind inner child work is... A healing modality is that all people on earth hold within themselves the essence of the children that we once were. As we mature, one part of us grows up, but the other part of us stays a child. The inner child symbolizes our emotional selves. Regardless of your childhood experiences, good or bad, the adult part of you has grown up despite not getting everything that it really needed in childhood. Therefore, your adult self holds the key to healing. But when I was in trauma therapy myself, the way I was doing inner child work never really made me feel complete. It wasn't until I already had a successful international career as a spiritual teacher that I came to completely understand exactly why the technique that I had discovered in the mind space worked, and why inner child work works. And even more importantly, and this is the crux, how they fit together. I realized that I had found the Holy Grail. I began to design a process, one that would help make even the most wounded and fractured person whole again. I perfected the process by using it on myself first, and then with my clients. My wish for you... This is going to make me cry. My wish for you is that you experience the kind of joyous life that is available only to those who are willing to courageously journey deep within themselves, resurrecting the aspects of themselves that have been lost. After all, if this process can heal a survivor of complex ritual abuse, it can heal anyone. I call this approach the completion process. And that's the introduction. That is the introduction to the completion process, and that's all that I'm going to be reading for the rest of today. So I hope you liked that introduction. Sorry about my words, sorry about my appearance. I didn't know I was going to be doing this, just thought I was going to be doing some test runs, so this is very spontaneous, but I enjoyed it. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will be back. I'm going to be actually buzzing my hair tomorrow and dyeing it a color, so I will be back tomorrow to do that live on here. So see you then.